We shall now turn our attention to the first keynote speaker. Revered Swami Tattwamayananda Maharaj is currently the Minister of the Vedanta Society of Northern California, San Francisco, originally founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1900. Maharaj underwent traditional training in Hindu scriptures, Sanskrit, Vedic, and Vedantic literature for many years from his early days. He served in various centers of the Ramakrishna order in India as editor, publisher, and teacher of Sanskrit, Advaitic texts such as Sri Shankaracharya's commentaries on the Prasthanatraya, Buddhism, and Indian philosophy. Before leaving for the United States in 2012, Revered Maharaj was teaching at the Training Center in Belur Math, the institution that trains the monks of the Ramakrishna order. Apart from his traditional education, Maharaj has also received modern university education in English literature, psychology, European history, and Western philosophy. Revered Maharaj is frequently invited for lectures on yoga, Vedanta, and traditional Hindu scriptures, and for participating in interfaith dialogues. I now invite Revered Maharaj to address us all. The subject of his talk is the concept of Dharma depicted in Indian epics and some unanswered questions, navigating the complexities of the modern age.
Yonta pravishya mama vachamimam prasuttam sanjeevayadi akhila shakti dharaswadhamna anyamscha hastacharana sravanatvagadim pranan namo bhagavade purushaya tubhyam ya devi stuvide nityam vibhute vedaparagekhi swame vasudajikvagre brahmaruva saraswati stavakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasya rupini Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. So it's a very intriguing topic in front of me, not necessarily linked directly to either of these two epics. So before starting this talk, I want to convey my pranams to Suparnanandaji, my namaskar to the two distinguished speakers on the dais, Professor Vohra and Professor Chakravarti, and also the monks who have assembled here, many of whom happen to be students whom had the privilege to teach in the training center in Belur Math. So the topic in front of me was actually provoked and prompted by a very interesting incident that took place in San Francisco in one of the conferences where a number of professors of Greek and Latin language tradition, Indologists and others were gathered. You know, American universities are not very great in teaching classics, Homer or Iliad, Odyssey or Virgil's Aeneid. They don't care much for classical studies. But there was a conference in which I had to speak on these two important epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata. And as the conversation went on, it so happened that they were talking about Rama's bloodthirstiness. Rama was a great warrior, a warlord, and so on. Then, because there were so many great specialists on Greek and Latin who had studied Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and also Virgil's Aeneid, so I drew a parallel between Rama's conduct in Lanka just after the battle and the conduct of Achilles after the Trojan War. It's very interesting. When Vibhishana almost refused to perform the after-death ceremony of Ravana, whom had deserted to take refuge at Rama on the principle of Dharma, So Rama was not very happy. So he said, Maranantani Vairani Nirvrittam na prayojanam kriyadam asya samskaru mama pesha yathatava. So Rama makes the statement to Vibhishana, who actually refuses to, almost refuses to perform after this ceremony of Ravana, his elder brother. Rama was fighting with Ravana, who had kidnapped his wife Sita and had killed, massacred, put to genocide any number of his followers, and almost killed Lakshmana. Lakshmana survived, of course. Now, and that Rama tells Vibhishana, our hostilities come to an end with death. Maranantani Vairani. Asmakam prayojanam nivrittam na prayojanam. Our purpose was not to kill Ravana, but to kill somebody who represented adharma. Now our goal is achieved. Now if you refuse to perform after this ceremony of Ravana, I shall do that because he is my brother as much as yours. Mama pesha yathatava. Now look at Homer and Iliad. In Iliad, Achilles killed Hector, who had killed Achilles' friend Patroclus, who had borrowed Achilles' armor and killed Patroclus, and Achilles was reluctant to fight. He had a quarrel with Agamemnon, the king of the Greeks. Now, Achilles entered the battle, killed Hector, and then after killing Hector, like Rama's killing Ravana, Achilles dragged the dead body of Hector to the tail of the horses that were driving his chariot and went around the entire battlefield in the presence of Hector's innumerable wives. He had many wives, children and parents. See where Achilles stands. Remember, Achilles is the Rama of the Greek literature of Homer. Ramo Vigrahavan Dharma Sadhu Satya Parakramaka. This statement doesn't come from Lakshmana. It comes from Maricha, whom Rama had driven out from the forests. Maricha did not forget what kind of man Rama was. So, and the same Maricha said, Rama se dakshino bahu nityam prana bahischaraka. So, look at this contrast. Rama asking Vibhishana to perform after this ceremony of Ravana, who had kidnapped his wife Sita, and who was practically a demon in human form. And that Rama was so compassionate, says, Maranantani Vairani Nirvrittam na prayojanam kriyadam asya samskaru mama pesha yathatava. Yathatava bhrata tathaiva mama api esha bhrata. Just as he's your brother, he's my brother also. If you don't perform after the ceremony, I shall do that. Now, there is Rama. Now, if you want to know the influence of Rama, of Ramayana, and the influence of Krishna of Mahabharata on Indian culture and tradition, you don't have to travel 5,000 years backward. You look at what Vivekananda said, maybe one of the most profound lectures of Swami Vivekananda was delivered, the first lecture in Colombo in Floral Hall, as he landed in 1897. Swamiji makes a statement, if Manu returned today, he won't find himself in a strange land, he won't be bewildered. Manu was the lawgiver who has lived maybe 6,000 years ago. Manu lived during the early Vedic age. Now, that Manu had returned today to India, for example, as much as Silicon Valley, where I am coming from. So I could just tell them, look at the temples in Silicon Valley. You can so many Hindu temples, and they perform all kinds of Indian dance forms, music forms, folklore. The temple architecture, which have remained intact for the last thousands of years. We don't know how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. We don't know. We don't know anything about the folklore, the dance forms, the music form, ancient Greeks and Romans. But we are still continuing Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra. If you have classical music or dance forms, but you study or teach in Tagore's the great institution, there you are following indirectly or directly Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, the musical forms, the Siksha, the Gandharva Shastra is is linked to Vedic tradition. So the antiquity and continuity of Indian culture and tradition that Swamiji refers to, emphasized in his first lecture in Columbus Hall. If Manu returned to India today, he won't find himself in a strange land. He won't be bewildered because the same ancient culture and tradition continues to flourish in modern times. That is in 1897. Now, what is actually this Dharma? What preserved this Indian culture? This Dharma ideal. Don't think Vedanta, because even Vedanta has to take the form of Dharma to be active and to influence human context. The ideal of Dharma is living in the hearts of millions of Indians and Hindus for the last several centuries. But again, Dharma is not an unmixed blessing. I can give many examples. See, there's an interesting incident when Prithviraj Chauhan defeated Muhammad Ghori, Battle of Terrain. According to many historians, Prithviraj Chauhan defeated Ghori. Ghori was running away, and Chauhan's, the Rajput king's followers tried to catch him, punish him, but Prithviraj king, the great Hindu king said, don't chase an enemy who is running away from battlefield. Was it actually an act of Dharma? Krishna would not have done it. Rama would have done it. Krishna was a combination, a blending of the highest idealism and the highest pragmatism. Can you imagine if Krishna had not helped Arjuna, the Pandavas, in the battlefield? Dushasana and Duryodhana would not have been punished. One of the most monstrous, unspeakable, shameful episodes in the entire world literature happened in Mahabharata. Draupadi was dragged into the court by Dushasana, disrobed almost. Thanks to Krishna's blessing, it did not happen, but it almost happened. Krishna helped him. If Krishna had not helped Arjuna or Pandavas, Bhishma and Drona could have single-handedly wiped out the entire Pandava army, which means Kauravas would have become victorious. Dushasana would have been victorious. The man who disrobed, responsible for the most heinous crime against women folk, the entire world literature. Even I tell you, even in Homer didn't depict a scene like that. Dushasana and Duryodhana were defeated because Krishna was different from Rama. Krishna knew that the evil person had to be defeated, if necessary, using some strategies and tactics. There is a great statement in the Mahabharata where Krishna justifies some of his actions and activities in defense of Dharma. Purvaihi anukato margo devaihi asuraghadibhihi sadbhisya anugata pantha sa sarvaihi anugamyate. This is a kind of transcendental Dharma. Remember, Rama renouncing Sita, listening to some absolute idiotic rumors, Krishna would not have done it. Krishna would have got rid of that, the person responsible for the rumor. But Rama couldn't do that. It doesn't mean that Rama was wrong. Rama represents Dharma in its most rigid, inflexible aspects, which doesn't work really, if you depict Dharma as pure truthfulness and ahimsa, that Dharma can be a liability to human civilization. I can give you examples. In 1938, just before the beginning of the Second World War, there was a pact. It's called the Pact of Appeasement, the Pact of Munich, 1938. Hitler was the chancellor. Germany was militarily the most advanced nation in Europe. Neville Chamberlain was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And De Gaulle, who was the President of France, Mussolini of Italy, and Hitler. They had a pact. In that pact, Chief British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain agreed with Hitler and entered a treaty with Hitler. Like Hitler was given permission to attack a part of Czechoslovakia, Sudetenland, which was mostly inhabited by Germans, and Hitler attacked that part of Czechoslovakia, then swallowed the entire country, and then he attacked Poland in a matter of months. And then followed the pact between Stalin and Hitler. It's called Ribbentrop-Molotov Treaty. Now, suppose Chamberlain had decided to militarily confront Hitler. France and Britain together were fully capable of neutralizing German power in 1938. So Chamberlain, he came back to UK and said, we have achieved peace in our generation. What happened? He thought he was practicing ahimsa. Ahimsa paramo dharma. So if you interpret dharma as ahimsa, that ahimsa can lead to himsa on a bigger scale. As I mentioned, if Krishna had not helped Pandavas, maybe the entire Pandavas would have been wiped out, of course, along with Kauravas. So Krishna is talking about a dharma which is somewhat different from the dharma as understood in the popular statement, Dhriyate lokaka anena iti dharmaka. And then dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gatassa pantha. In that statement, there is an indication that dharma is so abstract and subtle. So dharma cannot be practiced as pure ahimsa, as pure truthfulness. But dharma is a kind of supporting, sustaining, preserving spiritual humanistic mechanism. That's why in the Rigveda Samhita, two more terms are brought in together, dharma, satyam and ritam. Ritam implies the invisible preserving, balancing mechanism is invisible. There is an inherent balancing mechanism in creation. If you violate that rhythm, it is adharma. If you talk against it, it is asatyam. So, dharma in reality is what Krishna clearly stated. Remember this one. Krishna had done all this. And then Draupadi puts one question to Krishna. Why was it that a man like Bhishma, who was certainly a far greater warrior than Arjuna or Bhima or any of the Pandavas, how could this Bhishma be killed by the Pandavas or Drona for the matter? Dhritarashtra or Shikhandi, whoever may be. Krishna says, a Kshatriya who has the capability, responsibility and duty to use violence to protect dharma, that Kshatriya ayur belam, his strength and his life will come to an end. That's why Bhishma and Drona were killed by Shikhandi or Drishtadyumna, who are puny creatures compared to these mighty warriors. In the Yajnavalkya Smriti, there is a great statement. It is in a way linked to one sloka in Gita. In the Gita, Arjuna makes a very idiotic statement. I will tell you why it is idiotic. Arjuna says, Nihatya dhatrashtra annaka pridisya janardana pabameva sayadasman khattuidan ki atatayinaka. The statement is, if I kill these atatayins, I will be committing a terrible sin. Which translated into the context of Mahabharata, it means if I kill this, if I act against this Duryodhana, Dushasana, etc., I will be committing a terrible sin. A security personnel or special forces who are employed for defending the country on the border, if our attacks or terrorists attack our country, if our paramilitary forces, the BSF or the mountain forces, if they, we should not fight with our enemies, run away, we'll be committing sin. That is what Arjuna was telling in the first chapter of the Gita. Now, who are the Atatayins? Agnido Giridashaiva, Shastravani Dhanapaka, Kshetra Dada Apakatacha, Shadaideki Atatayinaka. And in the Abhastamba Smriti, Atatayi Vatharhanaka, statement is that Atatayi is a person who commits 6 crimes. Agnido Giridashaiva, somebody who sets fire to your home, or who tries to give poison in your food. Shastravani, who is chasing you with fully armed. Dhanapaka, who takes away your wealth, your field. Kshetra Dara Apakarta, who steals your fertile lands and who steals your wife, your women folk, mother, sister, wife, and so on. Anyone who commits these 6 crimes, avichareneva hanyat, should be killed without a second thought. This also comes from Smriti literature. Now, I shall try to tell you something about the uniqueness of Krishna's own transcendental Dharma concept. That's what I would call it. Purvaihi anugato margo, devaihi ashraghadibhihi, sadbhischa anugata pantha, sa sarvaihi anugamyate. This ancient Dharma, it's an answer to Dharmasya Tattvam Nikhitam Gukayam. The actual meaning and implication of Dharma is so subtle, it can Mahajano Yenagata Sapantha. You just find out how great men acted in different dilemmas, moral dilemmas, social dilemmas, and follow that. Don't take the book and consult, as Prithviraj Chauhan did. Now, the context is this. In transcendental Dharma, the purpose is the overall good of humanity and human civilization. It is that Dharma which actually implied in the great well-known statement, Dharana Dharma Ityahu, Dharmo Dharayate Prajaha. That is, that Dharma which preserves, supports, protects, and sustains human civilization, human culture. For that, you have to go beyond the verbal, the technical, the rigid interpretation of Dharma, as frequently found either in Gandhian literature or in some cases in Rama's story itself. Can you imagine Rama's Sita Tiraskara, Sita Parityaga, Valmiki's language? See, Rama is one of the greatest human character in world literature. So, Koinus means Sampradam Loge Gunavan Kashavirivan Dharmaknyascha Krudaknyascha Satyavakyo Dridhavrta. That is how Valmiki Ramayana begins. Valmiki's question to Narada. Narada says, Ikshvaku Vamsha Prabhavo Ramo Nama Pragiptidaka. I can only think of one person And that is Rama, who can be called the embodiment of all these virtues. But that Dharma should be followed in the sense, according to the interpretation given by Krishna. To give an example, look at Yudhishthira. Now, I don't think any of you would be happy to have a brother, elder brother like Yudhishthira. I don't think any woman in India would like to have a husband like Yudhishthira. Wonderful man, absolutely. Many wonderful qualities he had. But his qualities became a liability to himself and also to everyone around him. When I had a part of my education included a study of 19th century Russian literature. Mostly the works of Turgenev, Gogol, Dostoevsky, and some Tolstoy. So in Dostoevsky's The Idiot, some of you must have read, there's a character, Prince Minskin. Dostoevsky says he depicted Prince Minskin to create a character who somehow resembles Christ. So this man is so good that he became a liability wherever he went. He was returning from a lunatic asylum in Switzerland at the beginning of the novel The Idiot. And at the end of the novel, he returns to lunatic asylum. So often the critics of Dostoevsky often depicted Prince Minskin as the failed Christ. Remember, Yudhishthira's story somehow resembles that. He was such a good man that the end result was as a very big liability. There are very strong statements in Mahabharata where even Draupadi asked the question to Yudhishthira, you have lost your freedom. And then what right do you have to wager me in your gambling session? Vidura and Vikarna, these two great men, the only two great men who stood up against the humiliation of Draupadi were, one is Drupada, the other one is Vikarna. After that only, Dhritarashtra agreed to give back the kingdom and their rights and release them from the bondage after the gambling. Now, in this context, there is a statement that comes in Mahabharata where the great sage Markandeya visits Yudhishthira, Pandavas in the forest. Markandeya says, Neshe balasyedi charet adharmam means that is Neshe balasyedi balasya ise adharmam charet. It is a terrible statement. We know what it means. Balasya ise. If you don't have the power to react and respond against adharma in a dharmic way, then you respond to adharma in a way which is opposed to dharma. You can practice adharma when somebody is playing adharma to you. That is Markandeya, this very famous statement you can find. Even so, and there is a statement which Bhishma says, Balavamstu yadha dharmam loke pashyati purishaka sadharmo dharma velayam bhavadi abhigita pareihi. Bhishma says. So, Balavamstu yadha dharmam loke pashyati purishaka. It's a long discussion at the time when Bhishma was in the bed of arrows. So, Yudhishthira, all of them came. Draupadi puts his question. Kuddi was present. Finally, Bhishma, who kept quiet when Draupadi was being humiliated in Kaurava court. Drona also kept quiet. Karna encouraged Duryodhana and Dushasana. Bhishma, who could not raise his finger, who could have single-handedly responded and stopped that terrible crime, the most heinous crime that you ever find in any world literature. That Bhishma finally comes to a statement, a conclusion, Balavamsu yadha dharmam loke pashyati purushaka. How do people understand dharma? The dynamics of dharma in real life. A strong man, a virtuous man, a man of principles, very strong. Look at the way he responds. That is actually dharma as understood by common people. Dharma you cannot follow by looking at a book. That's why Lord Krishna says, Dharma is not ahimsa in its most simplistic meaning. Otherwise you would be doing what Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain did by signing the pact, so the pact of appeasement against Hitler in 1938, which actually was the beginning of the Second World War, which, you can imagine almost maybe 80 million people perished in the Second World War. So, unless we understand Dharma as given by Krishna, you won't understand the full implication of Dharma. Again, you have to tell you, I am a great follower of Rama. In the entire creative fiction, you don't find a man like Rama. Mahabharata is not entirely a piece of literature, like Valmiki Ramayana. I'm not talking about other Ramayana versions. Tulsidas ji and others have elevated Rama to the supreme deity. Ramam vidhi param brahma sachidanandam advayam sarvabhadir vinirmuktam satta matram agocharam. This is Adhyatma Ramayana, where Sita tells Hanuman, Ramam vidhi param brahma sachidanandam advayam. Rama is Advaita Brahman itself. But that's not the view of Valmiki. For Valmiki, Rama was Maryada Purushottama. It's a creation of a great literary masterpiece. But in Mahabharata, it is much beyond a literary classic. That's why in the Mahabharata, on the one hand, you find certain very moving scenes. Look at this, Draupadi, when she's being humiliated in the Kaurava court. The 5 Pandavas sitting there without raising a finger. The Bhima, of course, Bhima spoke something terrible. He'll take revenge against Duryodhana and Dushasana. That's true. But then the 5 Pandavas, they have wagered themselves. They wagered the kingdom. They wagered their wife. They wagered everything. Now, before all that, Yudhishthira had wagered himself. He had become a slave. Then what right did he have to gamble with his other brothers and even his wife herself? So Draupadi says, Nahi dasitamapanna Krishna bhavidamarkadi anise nahi rajaisha pane nyastedi me madi. Vidura says. Vidura makes a very profound statement. He says, Nahi dasitamapanna Krishna bhavidamarkadi anisena. See, Yudhishthira had no freedom on himself. He had enslaved himself to the entire Kauravas. He had lost his freedom. He is himself a slave. So what right did he have to wager his wife? And not only brothers, but even his wife. Again, there are many interesting scenes coming to Ramayana. I'm just trying to put this in juxtaposition within a very short limited time. I think I may have at least 10 minutes more. Now, in the Ramayana you find Kaigeyi, Manthara, a few characters who may be on the wrong side of Dharma, practicing adharma. So, there are some modern critics who will tell you that Kaigeyi was very much afraid of the misogynistic hierarchical system of Hindu society. Because Manu himself says, Asutantra striyakarya purushay diva nisham vishayeshu sajjandya samsthapya atmano vashe. Manu says in Manusmriti, Striyaka asutantra karyaha. Women should be kept in a state of dependence or slavery. because they will indulge in worldly enjoyments. But the same Manu, of course, says, Etra naryastu pujante tatra deva ramandicha, etra edastu na pujante tatra sarva aphala kriyaha. That also comes from Manu. So many of these Smriti statements are mutually contradictory. But Kaigeyi thought that she would be a slave to Kausalya and others if Rama had become the king. But anyway, the story is the same Kaigeyi later on repented and became very much happy and enjoyed when Rama returned from Lanka. So what I mean to say, in the two epics there are many paradoxical disconnects, many conflicting ideas. But the point is, though you find some characters stooping to the lowest levels of degradation and immorality, like Dushasana and Duryodhana, and some characters elevating themselves to the highest level of spiritual transcendence. For example, Kunti, see Vibhada Santuna Sashut, Yatra Yatra Jagat Prabhu, Bhavodo Darshanam Yat Syat, Ana Apuna Bhava Darshanam. Say a woman, a mother like Kunti, a wife like Sita, a brother like Lakshmana, and all the great characters. They do have a message for our own times. They do have a relevance for our own times. Lakshmana is a very interesting character. Brotherly love and affection in their most sublime aspect. You don't find any creative fiction. Lakshmana was asked to identify and recognize Sita's ornaments, which she had dropped while being taken away by Ravana, which Sugriva and others brought before. The man Rama asked him to recognize. Lakshmana said, Nakam janami keyure, Nakam janami kundale, Nupare tu akam janami, Nityam padabhivantanat. I can't recognize Sita's ornament she was wearing on her neck or her earrings. I can only recognize what she was wearing on her feet, because I used to mentally do pranams to her, because the elder brother's wife is like mother. And his mother, Sumitra, Ramam Dasaratham Vidhi, Mam Vidhi Janagatmajam, Ayodhyam Aravim Vidhi, Getcha Tada Yathasukham. So you don't find such sublime characters. Sumitra, while seeing off Lakshmana, who had no obligation to follow Rama to the forest by any stretch of imagination, she says, all right, you go. She was a far greater mother than perhaps even Kausalya. She could have stopped him. You have no business to go to accompany your elder brother. But she says, with a blessing, she says, you go along with your brother, you treat him as Dasharatha, your father, and when you look at your elder brother's wife, think that Sita is myself, Sita is your mother. And that Lakshmana, keeping that great idea dearest to his heart, is one of the most wonderful characters in the Ramayana. So, though Rama, in a way, has a very inflexible, somewhat too idealistic an interpretation of Dharma, and Krishna had a more pragmatic and more adaptive and more all-round interpretation of Dharma, still it is Ramayana that comes as an example, as a role model in our family culture. Rama's love for brothers and Lakshmana's love for Rama. And again, Rama renounced kingdom 3 times. First, In the very beginning of his life, he didn't want to live like an ordinary human being. Vasishtha had to interfere. Yoga Vasishtha, you can say. And then again, of course, he went to forest. Again, by coming back, he sends Hanuman to Bharata and ask him to carefully analyze Bharata's body language. He informed him, I'm returning to Ayodhya, and find out whether this man is really happy or not. He may be feeling perhaps that the elder brother is coming and he was living like the king in Rama's absence. Now he had to give back the kingdom. So carefully understand, then Hanuman found Bharata was all eager to give back the responsibility, the kingdom to Rama. So mentally Rama renounces his kingdom for the third time. So there are many very interesting, sublime examples of human contact. Nowhere in the world do you come across this kind of family connection. So even now, if you go to America, Silicon Valley, from where I'm coming, it's a very interesting place. Many Indians, youngsters, IT professionals coming, being excited in the middle of Silicon Valley, suddenly they want to pretend as if they are great grandchildren of George Washington. They want to be proud of their Yankee identity. But slowly they find that after some time that American white people, they don't identify beyond the limit. They won't invite you to their homes. Workalism is wonderful. You feel this desperate need to connect with your own ancestors' culture. So one professor, American professor, great Indologist, actually a professor of Greek and Indic languages in the university, no emeritus professor, retired. He once told me, said, whenever some Indian youngsters came to Berkeley University, some of them Stanford universities, he used to ask them, have you read Ramayana? Have you read Vivekananda? Do you know anything about yoga? They would say, we don't know anything. And they're very happy when they say they don't know anything. They want to pretend as if they are some distant cousins of George Washington. That doesn't work. So he tells them frequently, you study your own culture, your own tradition, your Ramayana, your Mahabharata, your Gita. All these great works contain some grand, great spiritual, cultural, ethical ideas which are not found anywhere else. So you should read them and imbibe them. Then only you will be respected by Americans. Remember, when Indians are proud of their own national culture and spiritual identity, then Americans respect you. Educated Americans respect you. So these two epics, in a way, continue to influence our family culture, our civilizational culture, our traditional moral and ethical values. I shall give you another important incident from Indian history, which is factual, and this is very interesting. In the Gita, Krishna's small little statement, Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha. He talks about Swadharma, Nishkama Karma, and so on. So, in one important context, in just 2 words, Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha, actually 4 words, a phrase, so to speak. Think of me and act. This is the practical message of Dharma. As Bhishma said, you cannot read a book, what should be my Dharma? There is no end to that. But what is your duty, your Dharma, in terms of your status, position in society, your education, what society expects from you, and what you're supposed to do, and what makes you, kritakritya means when you do something, you feel a kind of inner contentment, inner serenity and happiness. That should be a Swadharma. So Krishna says, Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha, contemplation and action. Now, in total contrast to this, I shall give one interesting incident. How far, very often, we deviated from Krishna's message, Krishna's interpretation of Dharma. Swamiji says very often, the day when householders started practicing renunciation and non-violence, the fate of India was sealed. Swamiji says, why was that a handful of Europeans could come to this country and the entire nation lay prostrate before them? Swamiji goes on lamenting the fate of India, the fate of Hindu society. Very often, the concept of Dharma took the Shasana. So, householders who should resist, should have power, wealth and ability and dynamism, they started practicing extreme austerity, poverty and tapas, shaujas, all those things, In fact, Manu himself says, Tasmat trayopyasramino jnanena annena channudam grihasthaina ivadharinde tasmat jesthasrami grihi. Grihasthasrama is jesthasrama because brahmacharyasrama, Vanaprasthasrama, Sannyasasrama, Trayopyasraminaka. They are all dependent upon Grihasthasrama. So Grihastha's duty is to protect, to use violence, himsa, for preserving Dharma. All these were somehow reversed. So our Dharma concept began the Shasana practice for thousands of years. As a result, this great country had to suffer more than 900 years of slavery and foreign invasions. I can give one interesting incident that is from South India. Now, Ramanujacharya wrote Sri Bhashyam, that is his classical work in which he Puravaksha and all that, which I frequently teach. And there is a commentary written by Sudarsana Suri. It is called Sudha Prakashika. Very famous book. So Ramanuja's Bhashya on Brahma Sutra is called the Sri Bhashyam. His commentary by one of the later Sri Vaishnavites who was actually elder contemporary of Vedanta Desika is called Sudha Prakashika. At that time, that means almost 100 years after Ramanuja's passing away, Malik Kafur attacked Srirangam temple. All the temples he attacked, in fact, Tanjore, Srirangam, Kumbhakonam, Rameswaram and so on. He was the general of Alauddin Khilji. So, thousands of priests tried to defend because they have practiced prapatti. Anigu illisa sankalpaga, pradigu illisa varjanam, rakshisiddhi vishwasa, goptrutta varanam tadha, atma niksheba karpanne shadvidha sharanagati. 6 elements of sharanagati prapatti. That is a central thesis of Ramanuja Sampradaya. Sharanagati. So, you should always have favorable thought currents. And you should avoid pradikullesya varjanam, avoid all negative thought currents. Then rakshasiddhi, you should think that God will protect you. God is only protector. Atma niksheba, then you should practice yourself. Kripana, that means you should destitute, totally helpless, and you should surrender yourself to Lord's grace. These are the 6 important aspects of Ramanuja's Sharanagati. Sharanagati Gadyam is one of the Gadyatrayas of Ramanuja. Now, where this Sudarsana Suri, who was the author of this Sudiprakashika, he was killed by the soldiers, by the attackers who came along with Malik Kafur. Vedanta Desika had just one handwritten copy of this commentary, Sudiprakashika. He was holding to his hand. They were attacked by the enemies at night, forest. So he held that single handwritten copy close to his chest and lay as if he was dead. So Vaishnavas tell you he had practiced this stambha, means the prana stambha. He could lay there as if he's dead man. And so the single handwritten copy of the book was spared. Now, the same Vedanta Desika and Sudarsana Suri and Ramanuja, they were worshipping Lord Sriranganatha, who was Krishna himself. And that Krishna had told Arjuna, Mam Anusmara Yuddhicha. So some priests, they took hold of, snatched some old rusted swords, tried to defend. They could not do, of course, because they had no cavalry. Malik Kafur had advanced cavalry, Persian and Arab horses, so they had advanced cavalry, which the Indians never had that kind of high quality cavalry. Anyway, so what happens was, Krishna's message was not taken very seriously by Indians. So Swamiji himself laments, what Krishna taught, Europeans practiced, what Christ taught, Indians practiced. So you can see this mutual exchange. Whatever it is, Dharma and its effect on our real life, its meaning in modern times, it is a kind of spiritual universal humanism, but its method of action is Mam Anusmara Yuddhecha. It's not war. Act, but think of God. Inaction has no place in Dharma. So Dharma should not be interpreted literally as ahimsa in its literal, superficial meaning. Because that kind of practice of ahimsa can lead to higher himsa. Because Neville Chamberlain practiced ahimsa. So what happened? We had Second World War. Gandhi himself, you can imagine. Gandhiji, of course, was a prophet of ahimsa. But same Gandhi had to go around all over India taking the request of Lord Mountbatten to encourage Indians to join British war effort. 2.5 million Indians fought in Second World War. So I don't want to go further. I suppose I'm going to address you on the 6th, the concluding session of this program. So maybe at that time I will tell you, but right now I think I've exhausted my time. Anyway, I'm immensely happy and incredibly grateful to this, to Suparnanandaji and all the Swamijis, the institutions, Institute Golpark, for inviting me and coming here to share some of my thoughts with you. Thank you, Namaskar. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
I'm extremely thankful to Revered Maharaj for setting the stage for the ensuing discussions in the academic sessions that we have scheduled for the next 2 days.